Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Welcome everyone. And a quick reminder as we start that this session is being live streamed on YouTube. So welcome to the Greater Christchurch Partnership Hearings Panel for the Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-2035. This is our second session of hearings. Before we proceed any further today, Councillor Edge is unavailable, and so we need to elect a chairperson for today's hearings. Do I have a nominee? Okay, Neville's nominating me.
Second.
Nicole's seconding that. Any discussion? All in favour? Aye. Any against? No. It's tempting. Motion is carried. All right, so today we're going to continue to hear submissions on the Regional Public Transport Plan. I've been informed that there is a quorum present, and I'm pleased to declare the meeting open. Chair at the commencement of the meeting, and any such recordings may be stopped. Electronic devices and phones may only be used to advance the business of the meeting, and personal use is at the discretion of the chair. Okay, so apologies. We've formally received an apology from Councillor Edge. SCCC, we move those? We don't need to move those here? Okay, that's great. Any conflicts of interest for today? No. Excellent. Okay, so we're a few minutes ahead of time, which is most excellent. So we're going to hear from Sharn, who's from the Malvern Community Board. So welcome. If you come and sit up the front. Yeah, any one of those seats, and when you're ready to speak, there's a little button that's to turn it on so everyone can hear.
Hello and thank you. My name is Sharn and I am a Malvern Community Board member, and I'm here today speaking on our submission, the Malvern Community Board submission on the Regional Public Transport Plan for 2024 through. Thank you very much for providing an opportunity for consultation on this long-term plan. This is something that I'm certainly passionate about. I was a Christchurch resident for many years, and about 7 years ago my family moved out to Selwyn, mainly out to Malvern. And I've, over the past 7 years, noticed the increase in growth and more of a need for public transport services out in the Malvern area. The Malvern Community Board of Selwyn District submit on behalf of the Malvern community, which covers the largest area of the Selwyn District with approximately 1,500 residents. Selwyn is the second largest Canterbury district, district, making up 12% of the population of the Canterbury region. Obviously, Christchurch is the bigger. The Malvern ward has grown by approximately 4,000 residents between 2013 and 2023 based on the New Zealand Census statistical data. Projected 91% growth by 2024 as stated on page 16 of your regional plan transport proposal. The Malvern ward has grown, with West Melton having come into the Malvern ward in October 22, and it looks as if the outcome of the representation review will have West Melton remain in this ward for some time to come. On top of that, the Selwyn District's growth plan for districts include growth strategy for West Melton, Kui, Darfield, and other small satellite rural townships. With families choosing to move to Malvern, there has also been a boom in the youth population. Malvern does not have the facilities or amenities to cater to these new families and youth, and newcomers are finding they need to travel to Rolleston or Christchurch to access essential and basic services. General practitioners, dentists, higher education, social services, fitness and leisure centres, supermarkets and more. Based on the 2013 and 2023 census data, youth between the ages of 15 to 29 and persons 65 and over, 5,500 for the Malvern ward. Youth numbers have grown by 500 over the 10-year period, and persons 65 and over have almost doubled in that 10-year period. Currently, the only bus to connect our Malvern township with Christchurch City is the number 86, which is a one bus in, one bus out system. This bus runs Monday to Friday, leaving Darfield at 7 a.m. and arriving at the Christchurch Bus Exchange at 8:14 a.m. This bus then leaves the Christchurch Bus Exchange at 4:38 p.m, arriving in Darfield around 5:45 p.m. Stops are Kirwi, West Melton, Westfield Mall, Bus Interchange, Manchester Street, Superstop. ECAN is aware of the need and the demand for more runs to and from Christchurch City. I have an extract here from the press in January 24, where Chair Peter Scott has said that he understands that there is a need and that there is not enough funding from the government to provide the bus services that are required for Malvern. I've also found quite a number of articles that are focused on the Selwyn District public transport. Majority of the content within those articles are related to the number 86 bus. So I don't want to sit here and waste your time explaining to you the need when the information is already available to you. Past services. The Malvern community, Selwyn, needs more public transport options to accommodates were presented prematurely as developments in the area were at the early stages. I have stated in my submission that there was a Darfield to Rolleston bus. Since then, I just want to provide a correction. Since then, I've found that that was a trial that was augmented through this Selwyn Youth Council. It was run over a period of 2 days on the weekend. I received information in relation to this quite late, and I'd like to, if it's okay with the panel, provide that via email after I've finished speaking. But there was a trial and there is some data surrounding that which I'd like to offer the panel. There was also a bus that was providing transport for students within the Malvern area into the Christchurch schools. I've said in our submission that that service stopped. The service that was available, I believe, was subsidised. It hasn't stopped. It is now no longer subsidised and run by a private entity. That said, not everybody can afford the cost to send their children to a school in Christchurch. We believe now is the time to explore further options for Malvern, and we would appreciate the serious consideration of the views of the Malvern community with targeted consultation for the area's residents, and this be a matter of consideration for the long-term plan and potentially looking further into the future for Malvern. I also come with an alternative proposal. I have tabled a flyer from a business called Selwyn Shuttles. I've met with the owner and operator, Brad Wilson. He has provided me with an initial indicative proposal of what it potentially would look like and cost for him to provide a shuttle service from Darfield and in a loop route through the Malvern communities, and Rolleston obviously is the destination. So the suggested route would be Darfield, Kirwi, West Melton, Rolleston, Burnham, Dunsandel, Hororata, Colgate and Darfield. Allowing for 3-minute stops, this round trip is 2 hours. So they could have 5 runs a day, 8 a.m, 10 a.m, lunchtime, 1 p.m, 3 p.m and 5 p.m. Implementation. He would consider leasing a dedicated vehicle, 25-seat bus, contract a full-time driver, and he would be the backup. The idea of a 25-seater bus is that the driver would not require a heavy truck licence to be able to operate. The daily cost is looking at about $650 a day. This person has been part of a startup of a ferry service in Auckland, so this isn't the first time that this person has been involved in such a situation, and I believe the business he was working for ended up partnering with Auckland Regional Transport. He's given me some passenger and price indications. So at 15 passengers a day, the fare would look like $43.30. With a goal of 75 passengers a day, that fare would look like $8.60. I would also like to suggest that a serious consideration into an extra bus from Darfield into Christchurch and an extra bus from Christchurch back to Darfield be considered. From my understanding of what the community needs, a later bus running into Darfield, so early mid-morning, so between 9 and 10 a.m, potentially a earlier bus coming back in than what we currently have. However, if we have a later bus leaving Darfield, then potentially a later bus coming back from Christchurch would be a better option. So I don't think much is being asked in regards to extra services by the Malvern community when it comes to an extra bus. And based on the current numbers, I think more people would utilise the bus system if there was extra. Thank you.
So that's 1 minute to go. So any questions?
Thanks, thanks, Sharn, coming to see us. And as we discussed, so you're going to email in what you've said, because that was quite an in-depth about what you thought with the buses. And so I've made a few notes, but yeah, having your notes will be good. So we're also looking at about pets on buses. Did the community board talk about that at all, or any thoughts about that?
No, the board did not discuss that, and I have not had any feedback from the community around pets on buses.
Thanks so much for your time, Sharn. It's really appreciated that you've come in all this way to present to us today. So thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right, so next we have Mark Peters. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right, so I'm Mark Peters, Councillor for Hornby. Come to speak to my personal submission and my personal thoughts around your plan. And really, the crux, I think, is that we need to make public transport as accessible and reliable as possible. And I'm keen, certainly in my personal capacity as a member of the Christchurch City Council, to try and work as closely as we can with Environment Canterbury and other councils to try and reach those goals. We need to make sure that the public transport is where people need it when they need it, and is reliably able to get through the transport corridors in and through the city to where people need to get when they need to get there. The better we can make the services, the more likely people are to use them. And we've all got lofty emissions goals that we're trying to reach and attain. And to do that, I think we've got to really be certain that we can make the transport network for the public transport as reliable as we possibly can, to encourage people that as they see the bus zooming past them in the public transport corridor lanes, they feel like, well, maybe we need to get out of my car and get into that bus. So more than keen to be part of that solution, and really keen to see what you can have coming out of this process to hopefully move our public transport forward in a bit of a step change, because we certainly need it. There's no doubt about that, and we've just got to find ways to navigate our way through that. One of the frustrations I hear on a regular basis from my constituents is that getting to the services that they need to in the way of buses has become more difficult over the last decade. They used to be able to get on something like the 1:30 bus out of Hey in the Hornby area and get all the way into town. But now they've got to get to a random location, swap buses, which might take who knows how long for the next service to connect, so that they can then get onward to where they need to get to. So we need to really make our public transport solutions smarter and more reliable, so that people can use it as a viable alternative to the convenience of their cars. It's all too convenient to have a car to come into the city and then zip out to where you need to get to for your next appointment. And we need to make sure that we can get the public transport operating in such a way that people can then rely on it to step into that similar gap. It may not be quite as useful as it might be to use your own vehicle, but if we can get it somewhere close, that encourages people to step out and make that step change that we need them to make, so that we can try and get this emissions target getting in the place it needs to get to. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I've got a first question, and that what's the closest bus currently to Matatiki?
The closest bus to Matatiki would be the 125.
Yeah.
And the Matatiki Centre is one of the new facilities that, as a Christchurch city, we have opened in recent times, and we have no bus services to. I have been in contact with local ECAN councillors to try and write that. From what I can see, the easiest thing to do would be to look at detouring something like the 125 off the Carmen Road path that it takes now, down to Waterloo Road in front of the Matatiki, allow the patrons to access that wonderful new facility, and then also continue on into the suburb of Heihei, where the 130 goes through there at the moment, but it goes different places. The 125 going through there and then going onwards to even Yaldhurst Park is another new subdivision in the last decade, which has got bus stop infrastructure through it, but does not have any buses. So you could have the 125 detour and become more useful. And there's a number of instances, I think, around not just Hornby, but also in Horswell, where if we did a bit of fine-tuning on our public transport routes, we could have a much bigger impact on trying to get people access to the bus services they need to be able to get where they need to get to. So I'd really like to see more flexibility, but I'd be really keen for us as Christchurch City and ECAN to work really closely together.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark, just around, you talked about frequency, and what about innovation? Pets on buses, those sort of, do you think that will give exactly the same result as you're talking about with frequency and people seeing things go past? Do you think we need more innovation within the buses?
I think we do. As we are trying to encourage more people onto the services, we need to be more flexible. And for instance, if people move from having a private vehicle to perhaps using a bus to look at accessing their pet services with their vets and stuff, they're going to need to be able to take their pets on buses. So we've got to be flexible enough in the services to allow for the modern society that we all live in. And if you don't allow pets onto buses, then how are people going to use that to access their vet services for their beloved pets? So we've got to be flexible with that. And we've just got to get, I think, smarter in many avenues of the public transport so that we can try and include as many as possible rather than exclude anyone.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Very good, thank you, and good luck with your deliberations.
Thank you. Next up we have Jessie Amer from Christchurch International Airport Limited. And Felicity. Both welcome at the table. Thanks so much for coming in. I'll leave it to you.
Tēnā koutou. So my name is Jessie Amer and I'm a Senior Environment and Planning Advisor at Christchurch Airport. And this is my colleague Felicity Hayman, who's the Environment and Planning Manager at the airport. So on behalf of the airport, we'd like to thank you both for the opportunities to submit on this plan and for your time today to listen to our submission. So Christchurch Airport is the largest airport in the South Island and the second largest in the country. It makes a significant contribution to the social well-being and economic development of the Canterbury region. The airport forms a critical component of Canterbury's transport network, and the airport therefore has a significant interest in ensuring that there are effective public transport connections to and from the airport, both for travellers and for our employee base. As of 2019, just under 7 million passengers and their associated metres and greeters passed through the airport, with combined airport activity seeing between 25 and 30,000 people visiting the airport each day. This is only going to grow. The most recent revision of the Airport Master Plan shows that passenger numbers are expected to reach 11.7 million by 2040. But it's not just travellers who come to and fro the airport each day. In total, aviation and other businesses at the airport sustain around 9,000 roles, making it the single largest centre of employment in the South Island. So it's really important that there are effective public transport connections to and from the airport for both travellers and this vast employment base. So there are three key things I'd just like to touch on really briefly with you today. These relate to supporting infrastructure upgrades at the Christchurch Airport bus terminus, route updates to service the wider airport campus, and the airport's involvement in mass rapid transit conversations moving forward. So firstly, in relation to supporting infrastructure, the airport supports the continued bus services to the airport campus, including proposed changes that would increase the frequency of buses, such as that Route 3 airport to Sumner route and the 8 port to port route. However, this will lead to some practicalities with managing this increased frequency at the airport terminus area. Firstly, structural changes are required to the bus parking bays to account for both this increased frequency of service as well as the additional weight that these zero-emission buses will have. And in addition, during peak summer months, which we're just coming into now, there are going to be capacity constraints in this parking area due to tourism and charter buses. And if we look at our window right now, it's looking pretty jam-packed. And so we'd welcome the opportunity to meet with the right people at ECAN to discuss the process and associated costs with managing these upgrades required to meet the services proposed under this plan. The second key point I'd like to run through is proposed network changes to provide routes throughout the wider campus. As mentioned previously, there are 9,000 people who work throughout the airport campus, and many of these people don't work in or around the terminal and are in locations such as Dakota Park, our freight precinct to the south of the airport, which is not served at all by public transport at the moment. And this means that public transport, while there are some great connections to the airport and particularly the terminal, it isn't a viable option for many of our people who work on the broader campus. So we would support an addition of services or extensions to these bus routes to serve our wider campus, either through new specialist services or just additions to existing routes, and would be really keen to have an opportunity to talk to the right people at Council to discuss how this can take place. We also consider there is a need to analyse whether the routes currently serving the airport are efficient and effective at capturing the significant pool of people who could be using this public transport, and again would be interested in working with the Council to better understand this. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about today is mass rapid transit, and we appreciate and support the concept of mass rapid transit at a concept level for Greater Christchurch. The need for reliable and efficient access to the airport is critical now, not only for travellers but for our employee base. And this is going to become increasingly important in the future as these traveller numbers grow, as our campus activities continue to grow, and as we transition into a low-carbon future. So the airport considers that we need to be an important consideration in the context of these mass rapid transit conversations. So just to summarise, the airport is a critical component of Canterbury's transport network. We seek to ensure that there are efficient and effective transport connections to and from the airport, both for travellers and for employees, and seek that there are sufficient infrastructure in place to support these connections. We would welcome the opportunity to meet with the right people at Council to discuss the content of the submission in more detail. Ngā mihi nui, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for that. And you're right, like I think I use the number 8 a lot, and I see a lot of people with suitcases, but very few people, I guess, without them, sort of going to work and stuff like that. Some, but directly in the airport itself rather than the broader campus. I'm just wondering, are you aware that the first, the indicative business case for mass rapid transit has already been done? and approved by the relevant councils, and it's up and Whakakapi. And
yes, we are. I guess we're just trying to signal that as a key infrastructure provider that the next stage is in, however that might.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, no, that's great. Nicole or Neville, anything from you? No. Just one thing is the pets issue that many people have mentioned. Do you have any views on that at all?
It's a great question. As a bus user, personally, yes, I think it's a great idea. We would have to probably have a think about that. And
it's okay to not have a view.
Yeah,
that's fine. I just wondered if you did. Yeah, that's fine. No, thank you so much for coming in. It's a really good and thorough submission, and as one of those key employment hubs and key transport link, it does make a lot of sense for you to be working directly with staff during this. So we'll see if we can make that happen as well. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have Emma Norrish, Chair of the Waipapa Community Board. And Simon, you can come up again as well. Microphone, Emma.
Papanui-Innes-Central Community Board, and this is Simon Britton, our Deputy Chair. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to our Community Board submission today. For those of you who might not know, our board covers a very diverse area of the city, from the fringes of the urban area out in Marshland through the built-up suburban areas of Redwood, Papanui, Maraho and Shirley, to the city fringe areas of St Albans, Richmond, part of Linwood and Phillipstown, right into the central city itself. We'll take this submission as read, but would just like to highlight a few of the main points. Our board is supportive of any steps to make our public transport network more accessible and more appealing for all users. Our board area feeds into the city from the north and deals with huge amounts of commuter traffic. We believe the opportunity exists to get more people out of cars and into public transport, not only easing traffic and safety issues on our streets, and improving the environment, but also offering an efficient, reliable and stress-free mode of transport for people both young and old and from all walks of life. Our board commends ECAN for the improvements made to the bus service in recent times, especially the increased integration of services, the introduction of Timuru's My Way service, the new e-buses, the flat fare trial and onboard information screens. We support the draft plan's key priorities and believe that the focus on improving our environment, integrating technology and making public transport more accessible and more affordable will lead to growing patronage. With regards to the introduction of more electric buses, we would like to note that the ground conditions in some areas, like certain parts of the Central Ward and St Albans, means that the extra weight of these buses creates shaking for residents. We would like to see this kept in mind when assessing routes, or perhaps the use of smaller, lighter vehicles on those particularly vulnerable streets. To further enhance the customer experience while travelling on buses, we would like to suggest audio announcements be introduced, as well as Wi-Fi for all public transport.
With respect to affordability, our board fully supports moves to improve accessibility, particularly for groups that might have more challenges in that area, such as the elderly, school children, students, community service card holders. We're supportive of the over 65 discount and would like to see that maintained or even extended, because we see that as a group that may be less likely to take up alternatives to public transport. And we do in our board area, in Papanui especially, we have a high prevalence of elderly rest homes and so on. So anything we can do to improve access and service for those groups is definitely appreciated.
Our board fully supports the vision for a high-frequency mass rapid service in Greater Christchurch. As I mentioned earlier, our board area deals with the effects of thousands of commuters from the northern suburbs and North Canterbury travelling through each day. There is an urgent need for MRT now, not in 10 to 30 years' time, and we urge you to reconsider the prioritising of this. We understand that ECAN are only one player in this vision, but ask that you take the opportunity with this plan to make it happen sooner rather than later.
Cool. And alongside that, also wanting to highlight the success and the growth with the Northern Express services from the Rangiora and Kaiapoi, and flag the need to extend or expand those services. It's had a really positive impact in terms of bringing people into the city without adding even more single occupant vehicles. We've heard from the Waimakariri District Council through our board process around Cranford Street of their support and their plans to extend one of their parking areas. So we would really appreciate and be grateful for consideration and expansion of those services.
In addition to this, we would like to suggest a meaningful investigation of park and ride facilities at the top of the northern corridor around the Belfast and Redwood area. As Simon said, we've seen the success of the recently built ones out at Waimakariri and believe there is an opportunity to make bus use more appealing for those living on the northern fringes of the city by having more there. Our board supports a trial of pets being allowed to travel on buses, as long as the needs of other passengers are respected. Our board believes parts of Christchurch where PT is most in need, such as the inner city east, would benefit from the replication of Timaru's My Way on-demand service. We would also like to see the introduction of a free circuit service to Christchurch Central, similar to the old yellow shuttle, which looped the CBD pre-earthquakes, allowing access to central city attractions and covering maybe a block or so outside of the 4 Avs. Our board would like to see increased public transport services being offered for large events happening in the city centre, and the appropriate publicity about the options available for users to make the most of PT to get into such events. And then the final suggestion we'd like to make is, as Simon mentioned, parts of our board area have a large number of rest homes, many newly built or expanded, and we know some of them are not adequately serviced at the moment by bus routes. Many of these residents rely on bus services to get around, so we ask that their needs are considered in future planning. That's it from us. Thank you.
Thanks so much. A quick one for me for the trial with the pets. We've had a couple of people mention not just the pets in approved carriers, but assistance dogs, for example, that aren't maybe specifically the low vision ones, but have been through additional training. And I'm just wondering, because that's not mentioned here, it's like trial of this and then potentially dogs. How would you feel about assistance dogs of some sort, if there was a system?
It's not something we discussed as a board, but I would imagine that we would all agree that, those dogs that have had the...
Cole, Neville?
Thank you. Just around bus route identification, we've had several people come in and talk about the old colours of the bus used to have the yellow, the purple, and all those things. Did the board discuss any of that? Is there any along the route there that that would be better off if they were colour coded or whatever you call it? Did the board have any view on anything like that?
Don't believe we've discussed that as a board. I can understand the rationale for the change that was made. I'm sure it gives the ECAN or the bus operators a lot more flexibility about which piece of equipment is deployed where. My personal view is having a coloured bus on a coloured route made a lot of sense for identification, but I can understand why it's changed, and nothing's come back to us as a board around that.
That's great. Thanks so much for coming in. It's really appreciated. Thanks. Okay, right. So we're now going to take a break until 1:30, and we will see you back online and in person then. Thank you. Kia ora and welcome back to the afternoon session for the public transport hearings. So just for those who are here but didn't hear earlier, we have an apology from Councillor Grant Edge today, but the other three of us are continuing on. So I'd like to welcome Mervyn up with Qtopia's submission. Thanks, Mervyn. And you've got 10 minutes, and if you'd like to just, there's a little button on the left to turn the microphone on so that everyone can hear you. We are being live streamed and it's being recorded.
Thanks. Kia ora, everyone. I'm Mervyn, the Social Services Lead from Qtopia. Just one voice representing our gender and sexually diverse youth was our roots. We provide gender affirming care and also education. I wanted to commend the Igloo initiative especially. I think that covers youth, but what was on the news recently, that homicide essentially in Auckland. So I think we need to broaden that out as well. I think that's a good initiative, but what about, other demographics as well? I clicked on the travel safe section of the Metro info page just to see what content was currently uploaded there, and from what I could see, there was no specific safety content there that I could see, so maybe if that could be looked at. I think upskilling on customer service, for customer service staff, security as well, and drivers would be really helpful. And I know that might come with costs, but hopefully would pay dividends down the track with greater safety for passengers. I saw that initiative petitions for drivers. I think AT found funding for them, and I think again commentary was, but what about the passengers on that bus as well? I know that there's that Motu Move initiative coming up to move from the Metro card. I think with that, if it's not requiring ID to register that card, say if someone pays for their fare with cash, or they maybe use a pseudonym when they register, apart from CCTV, I guess there's no tracking of who that passenger may be, so I don't know what the future holds around maybe cashless, but if that could maybe be looked into further, so easier to address who may have compromised safety in public transport. With the onboard screens, I think there's an opportunity there that they're not just marketing, that they could carry safety messages as well. I think the roaming pseudo-security people that were jumping on buses every now and then, I think it was formerly called the Customer Support Team Trial. Again, if funds could maybe be found to continue that initiative, because I know when one of them jumped on the bus, I think I was out in Rickard, and I immediately felt safer. Just the larger diversity, equity, inclusion banner, that not to see the rainbow community as isolated, but I guess we're part of a community that needs a little bit of TLC insight into our world, especially with the seeming increase in transphobia, which comes with bullying and harassment. I had a recent example when we stopped at Christchurch Hospital, and the driver, I'm sure the driver heard this man before he jumped on the bus. It was kicking off, screaming, and the driver just let him on. And I was like, I know you probably can't, screen a passenger because the driver's not a mental health professional, but he sat down and talked about seizures and so forth, and we were all like, holy shit, what could happen? So I don't know what can be done about that, because you can't have a clinical psych on every bus, but it did feel really risky that and I don't know what the protocol of the drivers is currently, but we only felt all right when he got off at the interchange. And I think lastly, if a driver doesn't intervene, I think it risks one of the passengers having to become a bit of a vigilante, you know, if another passenger does nut off and wants to harm another passenger. So I think in summary, the theme of my submission was safety, and also for minority groups, and in my case, the rainbow community. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks so much for that. Questions from Neville or Nicole? No. That's good. I've got one on the bus stops while they're waiting for the bus. You've mentioned CCTV, and I don't know about lighting and stuff as well.
Well, I've never lived in Christchurch before, but I'd heard of instances, I think, maybe to and fro from the interchange in particular. So I think there's that aspect. I think if you're at the interchange, you're pretty, you know, because you've got, is it red badge, I think is the contracted security, and you've got customer service staff and cleaners. But I think the second highest patronage hub is Riccarton. So maybe, you know, they could be the next areas to. So I think it's both. It's while you're waiting.
Yeah.
So I feel probably less safe, where you've got less thoroughfare, and also on the bus, I think you're at risk as well. And that was evidenced by that Auckland tragedy.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And I just was trying to clarify with the pets thing here. And you're sort of neutral on whether being an approved carrier, unhappy about only travelling off peak, and very unhappy about the limit of one. And I'm just trying to work out whether that matched up with the comment, which is, it seems like a don't do it comment.
Hopefully I haven't contradicted myself. I admit to, I think I concentrated on those areas which I felt was most relevant. So I might have been a bit hasty in the other. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was
areas.
About, it does, the comment also looks about safety. So it's about some dogs being uncontrollable or vicious. So.
Oh, I got you, yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, that's.
Don't they say that's up to the owner, and if it's received and the breed of the dog? Yep. I guess whatever happens with that, as long as the protocols adhered to, I guess, whatever's decided upon.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe I flicked to the wrong one. It's gone too far. No, I think I flicked to the wrong one. So I was looking at a comment from someone else's one.
Oh, no trouble.
Yep. I was thinking that doesn't line up with what you're just saying. No, that's great. So thank you very much. Thanks, Mervyn. What's the case? Why? Sitting in the wrong one there. Right. Dianne. Kia ora, Drucilla. Would you like to come and join us? Just because you were here early and I'd said you could, and we're still ahead of time, so. Kia ora, Drucilla. So if you just push the button, and then the little light will come on red. On the left there.
That's better.
Right, so you've got your time now, and if you'd like to leave some time for questions.
What I've done this morning is drafted up into 3 pages, and then I've just photocopied it, and I'll leave it here for you.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, things have changed, things keep changing in the last week. I'm now involved with another project, which it means changing everything that we've been planning. But anyway, the comment I got is my concern is we need a domestic rail service. I've actually been trying to work out how to get up to Wellington, and when I rang rail the other day to find the $500, $600 for tickets, I just couldn't believe it. I've got a son in Wellington, and also too, I lobbied on the stadium for 10 years. And I've been coming and going to hearings and hearing all this for 40 years. My parents did the Commonwealth Games. My mum was on a supporter of it, and she was guiding people. I was young enough to be involved with the drama side of it, so I've been lobbying on that. I'm not saying the Commonwealth Games, but we need to be better, and we need fast rail. We need a domestic fast rail. What's going to happen, I predict within 7 years that we will be looking at Lake Onslow or big projects, and we're going to have a shortage of workers. I've been working in traffic management since 2010 to 2024. I was working up in Kaikoura for 2 weeks. We lived in the village. When my father did Manapori, we lived in the hydro village. How are you going to get people from A to B? And quite often when we were doing the ANZ Bank, those guys were coming up from Invercargill. So what will happen is you might get somebody that's got to come up for a project, but they come by car. That's all got to change. If we want to keep our workers, we're actually going to have fast rail where you can bring people in, have them work, and they can work over different projects. It's all got to change, and it'll open the market for housing. We actually need I feel it's now time that Environment Canterbury looked at getting a working party together with the community to look at how we're going to promote our city. Otherwise, we're going to lose our market share. And when the stadium opens, we're going to be competing with Dunedin, where actually we could bring on historic rail. There's other things that we could do. So that is one thing that I want to bring up. The next thing is health and safety on the bikes. The other day I was on the bike when we had to leave an Asian tourist. I do know what the issue is. I've come in and spoken to somebody, and I know that you're working on it, okay? Health and safety, in the last 2 months, I've had to get off the bus for elderly gentlemen falling off the bus. Even myself, when the buses come in, this is a Rangiora bus, quite often the driver doesn't see that they're not close enough to the curb. And a lot of people have cataracts problems, and even myself, when I've looked a couple of times, I've nearly fallen out the back door. So that is an ongoing issue. The New Brighton Bridge, I spoke to the engineer, and I did the hearings, but I still couldn't believe why they hadn't allowed for tram and rail. So that's really what my submission is on. And I'm also developing, since 2018, I'm working on an Emergency Management Act, and I will be rolling that out to 20th of October next year, and it's all around the water infrastructure where the mapping is wrong. So I'm just making you aware of that. Just speaking like this, you need to have workshops where issues come up and you can keep going on, and we're all working together. It's about tourism, it's about jobs, it's about keeping our workers safe. This isn't, transport to me is an emergency management mapping problem. All right?
Thanks so much, Drucilla. Really appreciate you coming in today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anne Dingwall. Welcome, Anne. Thanks so much for coming in. If you get close to the time at the end, a little bell will ring so that you can allow time for questions.
And I don't know if you've got copies of so you can follow. Tēnā koutou card conditions. On each of my frequent bus trips, I continue to give considerable thought to both the fairness and practicality of introducing this proposed policy. Several fellow passengers have shared their opinion with me also. Responding to ECAN's invitation for public input as to what could make this safe and comfortable for all, I submit that the fundamental issue is the fact that the designs of the various new ECAN electric buses make no provision for the carriage of animals inside. Furthermore, no public consultation regarding such provision was undertaken before the introduction of these electric buses. ECAN is proposing allowing pets on public transport in a way that is amenable to other customers, ensuring a safe and comfortable journey for all passengers whilst providing an accessible network. To achieve this, ECAN would have to implement and enforce specific and appropriate conditions for allowing passengers to bring their pets aboard. Regarding the conditions, thus I support ECAN's draft policy. Passengers are permitted to travel with domestic pets on public transport with appropriate controls in place as identified in the Metro Code of Conduct. With the following ECAN proposed conditions: allowing one pet per adult passenger to travel on our buses during off-peak hours and in approved carriers. And I've also set out the present conditions that do allow animals on buses. Now let's consider ECAN's proposed conditions in more detail. 1 pet per adult passenger. Entering a bus with 2 pet carriers, paying one's fare, and then supporting 2 carriers on one's lap is simply not practical. Not to mention walking to the door and stepping off the bus while holding 2 carriers, all without disturbing other passengers. Pets can only travel off-peak. Weekdays 9 to 3 p.m. and after 6 p.m. and all-day weekends. I suggest that ECAN seek evidence regarding the appropriateness of the weekday off-peak limit of 3 p.m. An earlier limit of 2:30 p.m. or even 2 p.m. may be preferable. Buses are often crowded during so-called off-peak hours, sometimes standing room only, on routes which service schools, transporting pupils during the afternoons, for example, routes 29 and 1. In approved carriers, I suggest ECAN specify the maximum dimensions to ensure the carriers do not encroach on the space of other passengers seated alongside, and I suggest that ECAN require the approved carrier to be held on the passenger's lap, not on a seat for hygiene reasons, nor placed on the floor, where the carrier would be unrestrained and sliding with bus movements, as can occur with unrestrained luggage. I submit that such conditions would be consistent with ECAN's Metro Code of Conduct. In particular, the responsibility for passengers not to interfere with the comfort or safety of other people on the bus. I support ECAN's proposed inclusion of the rules for pets on public transport in the Metro Code of Conduct, whereby those rules could be reviewed and updated based on community feedback on a regular basis. In this regard, I suggest that an interval of time for scheduling a review be specified in the Code to ensure regular reviewing and updating of the pet travel rules. Nevertheless, I suggest that any initial ECAN policy for permitting travel with domestic pets on public transport be introduced on a specified trial basis and reviewed with the public and drivers after a specified period. This would address any unforeseen consequences undermining an ECAN key priority of providing a high-quality customer experience. Of course, imposed conditions would be restrictive and would exclude many wishing to bring their pets on public transport. However, just as the safety and comfort of all passengers is paramount, so the welfare of pets on ECAN public transport is a relevant matter. I do not support ECAN's introducing other conditions of carriage, allowing leashed and muzzled dogs on public transport. As I stated earlier, the designs of the various new ECAN electric buses are not conducive to transporting animals not confined in a carrier. No area within the buses has been provided for pets to rest on the floor. Passengers are seated in close proximity to each other, and it would not be in the welfare interests of an animal for its paws and or tail to be trodden on or kicked, whether accidentally or deliberately, not to mention being subjected to the heat from low-placed winter heating. Now, on the other matter that I included in my written submission, changes since the last plan on bus screens with real-time information. These are the electronic screens being introduced. In particular, the positioning of screens. And they've introduced them in some electric. There seem to be about 3 designs of electric buses, and these signs seem to be in one of the particular designs. And since I submitted made my written submission, I've since made a formal written complaint to ECAN regarding a screen's unsafe positioning, and I'm awaiting ECAN's response.
Thanks so much for that, Anne. Just clarify for me, What's unsafe about the positioning of those screens?
It seems to be, I've discovered there seem to be 3 different designs of electric buses that I travel on, either on the 29 or the number 1 route. And this one particular design, it has a screen on the right-hand side immediately behind the driver. And I think the one might be one down near the back, but the one that I've made my complaint about is the one, again, on the right-hand side behind the driver, above seating, and it's almost opposite the back door. Now, it's the level where that screen, the height of that screen, and I've said in my complaint that where it's been positioned, it doesn't allow for the height of taller passengers, such as me, sitting down on the seat by the window. And I have now hit my head 3 times when I've had to, there's only been a seat available, and you don't want to keep the driver waiting because they can't move till you're seated, and I've had to grab the seat by the window to keep the seat next free for someone else. The first time I bumped my head, I thought, oh, what was that? And looked up. Well, what prompted me to actually make the formal complaint was, it was just before a show weekend. I sat down, completely forgotten about the screen, and as I sit down, I sort of lean forward a bit, and my head smacked the lower edge of the screen, and it hit it really hard. It really did. And my head was sore for hours afterwards, and I thought, enough is enough. So anyway, I've since gone into and made a formal complaint. And then, would you believe, last week I bumped my head again on the same seat. Okay. But I had already put the complaint in.
Yeah, I know, that's good. Thank you for clarifying.
But I also say too that another passenger sitting next to another one and pointing out, any tall people, don't sit in that seat because you'll bump your head. He said no, that he thought it was actually illegal, the level at which the screen was set. And I said, well, you obviously know something. And he said, well, he was a surveyor, and he said it shouldn't be lower than the rails if you're standing and holding onto the yellow rails on the left up near the front. And I thought, well, that makes sense, because you're not supposed to be bumping your head on the rails, so why is this screen so much lower? And I was sitting next to when I really hit my head, I stood up when I got to the bus depot to see where my head next to me, and I hadn't discussed it with her. And I said, I'm just looking to see where the screen is. And she said, oh, she was shocked because the bottom of the screen was well above her head.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's really useful.
And I'm not going into the merits of those screens. That's another matter.
Yeah. Nicole?
Thanks. I was going to ask about what your conditions were for the dogs, but you've put in your submission to us now quite well spelt out what your conditions are around the dogs. So that's answered my questions. Thank you for all that.
One last thing. With you said no other dogs that aren't in carriers and things. How would you feel about assistance dogs? I mean, not the official low vision ones, but there are some other varieties of well-trained assistant dogs for people with difficulties that aren't necessarily low vision. Your microphone.
Are they dogs that have been approved by an organisation?
By an organisation, just not the official sort of low vision one. But yeah, so there could be a process potentially. It's just others have raised that.
Yes, because it would have to be authorised by some organisation. Otherwise, everyone would say, "Well, my dog's an assistance dog."
That's right. Yeah. So if that was an option, you'd want some sort of certification that was maybe shown to ECAN and.
Yes, to restrict.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in certain circumstances. But again, I'm thinking of the welfare of the dog, because these buses, where does the dog that's too big for a carrier, where does the dog go?
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much, Anne.
Oh,
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dianne Downward. Thank you. Welcome, Dianne.
Hello.
So you've seen how the microphones work there with Anne's one.
Get some water
Yeah. We're just regular people. You've presented plenty of times. Yep. If you just turn the microphone on. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi. First of all, with pets on buses, your desire is to see fewer cars on the road, so I think you have to allow pets on the buses. I always thought it was strange I could take my dog on the ferry to Diamond Harbour, but couldn't take the bus to Littleton with our dog to reach the ferry. But some people have religious, cultural, or other psychological fears of dogs, and dogs on a bus will be a challenge for them, and some people do not like any animals. But this is New Zealand, and Kiwis love their pets. So should our culture disappear to accommodate newcomers, or should newcomers adjust to our culture? It works with seeing eye dogs at the moment, so there's no reason it can't work with other pets. So one of my ideas is just that every other bus could be a pet-free bus. And just because pets are allowed on a bus doesn't mean they're actually going to be on a bus. Pets are restricted to 1 carry-on per cage per adult, or 1 dog on a lead per adult, muzzled if needed. Cats need to be in carry-on cases because if they see a dog, you won't be able to hold on to your cat. So cats and other small animals, I was trying to think maybe separate them from the dogs by being at the rear, but the new buses are all configured differently, so maybe in the luggage carrier at the front, or things can be worked out, and dogs on the floor area that is also used for wheelchairs when people with wheelchairs come on. No animals should be allowed on the seats. And just to say, I no longer own a dog, but personally would like to see pets allowed on buses. And I don't really know how many people are actually going to bring their pets on the bus realistically, but they should be allowed to, because they may have no other means of transport. For the travel corridor, I grew up in a city of just over 1 million in the 70s and took the bus everywhere, cycled and walked. And we didn't have the beginnings of an elevated rapid rail system until the mid-1980s. I've lived in other major cities with either elevated trains or underground subways. Anything at ground level can't be rapid, as it would be a massive danger to all. And to call it rapid transit is completely misleading, or you could say misinformation, which is the buzzword of the day. So all these cities still had buses as a major part of public transport, including park and ride express buses and park and ride for the SkyTrain, which was the monorail in Vancouver, and they also had hard rail for commuters. So a park and ride system with frequent buses is the most cost-effective way to get people using buses for their commute, and this will then lower emissions with fewer cars on the road. We had electric buses that connect to wires overhead for their power. They were reliable and very rarely caught on fire. Any fire was quickly put out with a fire extinguisher, and another bus would quickly come along to take passengers on their way. These types of buses are still in use today. Battery-powered e-buses are a completely different ballgame. And changing the fleet of e-buses to battery-powered e-buses, which can cost, I don't know how much your buses cost, but can cost $500,000 more per bus at this time, and it's not sustainable at this time. Ratepayers cannot afford increasing yearly rate rises, power prices are increasing with greater demand for power, and our power-producing infrastructure is limited, as it is the infrastructure to charge the buses, and the infrastructure regulation to deal with battery fires is basically non-existent. And just to highlight some of the differences between diesel fires and e-bus fires, and I didn't originally plan on making my submission about this, but the more I looked into it, I thought, I've got to say something. So the temperature of the fires of a diesel fire is approximately 700 to 800 degrees Celsius, while a battery fire is approximately 2,500 degrees Celsius. And this is higher than the melting point of steel, which greatly increases the risk of structural collapse in buildings as steel is placed inside concrete for support and strength, and of course for totally steel structures. The heat and the intensity of a battery fire has been compared to a blowtorch that can cut steel. The vapor escaping or venting from the battery is highly toxic and can cause an explosion, which is especially serious in a tunnel. So I'm thinking of the Littleton Tunnel. The bus I took here right now, it was a brand new e-bus. And if you think of that bus going into the tunnel, and it suddenly has a thermal runaway experience, which takes less than a minute from it to go from fumes or vapors to fire, an all-out fire. And at that heat, the whole tunnel is going to be a massive hazmat situation with the black toxic fumes. And I'll get to that in a second. And the heat in the tunnel will be massive, causing more fires of petrol vehicles and other EVs that happen to be in there. So it's like the tunnel in particular is, it's not good. Also, sorry, lost my place here. So also in parking garages and warehouses and things like that. I have some information here that I can give you because I know this is a lot of information, new information. So out in the open, the toxic smoke can spread far and wide, and therefore but it's toxic to all life forms, humans, animals, fish, insects, birds, waterways, and plants. So we've put a lot of effort into cleaning up our rivers, our streams, our, planting new native plants and everything. But who is going to be responsible for the cleanup? Can it be cleaned up? How do you clean it up? What's the cost? So there's a lot of questions to answer. So the toxic vapors include sulfuric acid, oxide of carbon, lithium, copper, cobalt, which are all toxic, as I've said. The long-term effects to humans is not known, but two first responders have died due to cobalt poisoning, which you can get through the skin, not just through breathing in. A gas petrol fire takes on average 1,000 gallons or 3,785 liters of water to extinguish, compared to an EV battery fire, which takes on average 30,000 gallons or 113,562 liters of water to control. And I say control because a battery fire can actually burn underwater because it creates its own oxygen. So there is some solutions, but anyway. So there are some things, but for smaller battery fires, so like Lithex is one of them, but it's very expensive. And considering one of our fire engines, the back end caught on fire, not because it was a complete EV, but it had a lithium-powered ventilation system. So the back end of one of our fire engines got destroyed, not completely destroyed, but badly destroyed, just from a small lithium battery in the back of it. So there's frequency versus severity. So there's a whole little 5-minute video on that from a fire captain. So of course, ice fires or internal combustion engine fires are more frequent, but London had 3 e-bus fires in 1 month this year of approximately 1,000 e-buses, and they were new e-buses, so this is not a good ratio. Usually EV battery fires are rare, but when they do occur, they are such a massive, massive hazmat situation that they can't really compare. So how much does going over, and I'm just wondering, thinking about all the new bumps we have on our roads, because being rattled is one of the things that can cause a battery to, they don't like the bumps, let me put it that way, can cause it to go into thermal runaway. So another thing to consider, and this is from a trial in Canberra, that the uplift efficiency range of the vehicle and reliability. So the failure rate for their diesel buses was 0.8%, and with the e-bus failure rate, it was almost 36% of the time, which is a 45% higher increase. Therefore, more e-buses are required for reliability, and when the battery life is entered into equation, so the e-buses there, I don't know what e-buses they had, but they had half the range of their diesel buses. So, they had to have their nap or get recharged, I guess, sometime in the afternoon, along with the passenger uplift capacity. So for there, they had 100 diesel buses. They needed 120 e-buses for the same capacity. So it means there's almost 3 times as many e-buses were needed compared to the number of diesel buses to have a fleet that people can rely upon, trust, and use. So overseas, when an e-bus caught fire, many times the whole electric fleet was taken off the road to check for problems. So what will happen in New Zealand? Will the other buses be taken off the road to check for problems? What will happen to people that rely on the bus for work and for appointments? So I'm not completely against EVs, and lithium-ion batteries are here to stay, but there's not a lot of safety regulations. The fire department isn't equipped for this, particularly the tunnel, as I've already mentioned. We just don't know the you just don't know when the batteries are going to go off. There's a lot of different systems, so more than I can say. Can I just give you these? Yeah,
It would be useful, thanks. But your time is pretty much up now. So the bell was 9 minutes. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, thank you.
So just one thing of warning. There's an Australian YouTuber in here, and he's very good with his science, with his chemistry and physics, but he's got Aussie humor, very down to earth. Yeah,
Right.
very earthy kind of language. So.
Okay, that's fine.
But he does have good information and shows where he gets it all from, and there is fire chiefs in there as well. So I've highlighted the 3 videos that are most important.
Thanks, Dianne. Thank you for putting all of that together for us. It's really useful.
Well, I just thought, like, holy moly.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah. That's great. Right. Right. Our next speaker isn't until 2:55, so we're a bit ahead of time. So we will adjourn until then. Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou and welcome back to this last afternoon session for the public transport hearings. We're up to Daniela Bagozzi. Nice to meet you, Daniela. Welcome. So there's a small button on the microphone there. That's the one.
Kia ora tātou. Ka tā wiwi e hau. Engari, nai nei, noho ana hau I roto I tēnei wehi. So I come from Italy and I've lived in Christchurch for the past 40 years, roundabout, accidentally ending up here, having married a New Zealander. And I don't often speak to panels, but I wrote some points to make sure I don't speak for too long.
Kia ora. Well, you've got 10 minutes, so heaps of time.
So I was asked by one of my neighbours to express support of the proposal to allow pets on buses. And so I sent in an email to express what my neighbour wanted to say, because he has no access to, internet and things like that. Now, my neighbour, who couldn't drive and couldn't afford to have a car anyway, would have loved to have taken his dog to the beach occasionally. His dog's since passed away, or to some dog park somewhere, because he knows about dog parks, but they're just unreachable. And perhaps he thought bigger dogs could be allowed on a bus with a muzzle. This may require dogs and their owners to perhaps board from the back and keep to a separate area of the bus to ensure that no one is scared or has problems with the dog's presence. Or maybe only some buses may be suitable for carrying dogs and their owners. And we appreciate that this will require more thought. After this, talking about this consultation on public transport with a few people from my neighbourhood, which is a low-income area in the inner city east, I gathered the clear impression that many people have things they would like to say, but they don't feel that these sorts of consultations are for them, and I'm not quoting verbatim. I'm definitely paraphrasing. Some are not able to do online surveys or write emails and even, say, present something written, a written document, and don't receive these sorts of notifications. But they have a lot of things to say, and they're happy to talk to local community workers and other people they already know and trust. So the following points were put forward by others in my neighbourhood, and I find myself in total agreement. So I'll be saying we think this and we think that. Okay. Although many don't realise it at first, we actually do, when we think about it or when it's explained, we do appreciate the efforts that ECAN has made to keep public transport in Christchurch affordable. The simple, easy-to-remember $2 fare, reduced to $1 for community services card holders, has made a huge difference to quite a few people. Together with the free travel for gold card holders, for some people it makes the difference between being shut up at home or being able to go somewhere, even just for a ride, or go and visit someone on the other side of town. Many in our area have no private transport and are not in a position to take up cycling because of age or disability, or fear, in some cases just simply anxiety or fear. So affordable public transport is essential. So please include affordability as always an important aim of whatever transport policy you're considering. Point 2, and keep it simple. The $2 reduced to $1 flat fare is much appreciated, not only because of its affordability, but because of its simplicity. It's easy to grasp and to remember, and so it reduces some of the perceived barriers to using public transport. And not having to tag on and tug off like they do in some other places is another great thing and reduces the complexity, therefore reducing the perceived barriers. And point 3, being able to carry bicycles on buses has made a huge difference to a number of people. So encouraging cycling with all the consequent health benefits, reduced congestion on roads and pressure on parking, etc. Now, you might think if you're cycling, and I'm a part-time cyclist, if you're cycling, you can go anyway, but very often the distance is too much for people. And so going somewhere and knowing that if you're too tired, you can actually wait for the bus and put your bicycle on the bus to come back is a huge incentive. As it is, putting the bike on the bus to go and then slowly making your way back, it really made a difference. So please find a way of reinstating the ability to carry bicycles on buses as soon as possible. Point 4, using cash on buses is really important to a lot of people. And please, whatever else you do to facilitate the paying of bus fares, please retain the ability to pay cash when necessary and to top up MetroCard on the bus using cash. Now, there's a point about changes to bus routes and new routes. And, of course, sometimes changes are inevitable, though they can bring challenges to people. I've heard of how some people have actually planned where to live, relying on the fact that there was a bus stop nearby and that bus stop disappearing and what that meant. About new bus routes and new subdivisions, so need new bus routes. The population growth brings its own challenges, not only to transport policy, but I would humbly suggest that we question the traditional colonial approach to constantly pushing for growth and try to achieve stability and, above all, environmental and social sustainability. Last point. Well, finally, we'd like to tell you how wonderful it is to get to a bus stop and see a display that tells you how soon the bus will arrive. Sometimes it makes a difference between deciding to go by bus or choosing another means of transport. Unfortunately, some of those displays are at shoulder height and appear to be easily damaged by frustrated would-be passengers in some areas, and sadly some of those areas are just our areas. Some people hit them hard when they appear to be slowing down, and it could be a sort of a network connection issue, a Wi-Fi connection. It could be a very minor issue that's resolved within a second or two, but some people get frustrated and they hit them hard when they appear to be malfunctioning, and so they're often broken and then taken away for ages to be. So may we respectfully suggest that those displays be replaced with displays such as the ones you have at the Super Stop on Manchester Street or at the stops outside the hospital that are situated higher up and so and they're easy to see and they seem to work all the time. So those are, kua mutua hau, those are all the things I'd gathered up to bring to you today. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you so much for putting that together and for collating so much rich information from your community. I think it makes a difference. I think we acknowledge that it is difficult for many members of the community to engage with councils. The systems are a bit opaque and people don't see that it's kind of their thing. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Now, there was more information that you read out than is in the submission that I've got here.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you were able to give us a copy of that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can send it in. Yeah.
If you're able to
There's
do that,
this one I've scribbled all over, but I can email it in to Oliver.
That would be great. Oliver? Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
To the same email address that I corresponded with.
Yeah, but in the meantime...
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Just following on from what Sarah's asked about consulting with people that you're saying find it more difficult to engage. Do you have any ideas of what might be easier for them to be able to engage with council sort of processes, like consultations?
Well, I found that. Sorry, I found that people have come forward. We've often sort of had community discussions, in our bumping spaces, and when we've had people coming together, that it's a lot easier for people to come forward with ideas when they're talking in a group, talking to people that they already know, like say through their local community centre. In our case, there's a community centre that has very long established relationships with lots of people. And I imagine it may be the same with some church networks or other established groups, rather than someone from outside coming in and say, we want to consult you, or we want to. And of course, as I say that, I'm also aware of the fact that it would add work to the workload of the people already doing what they're doing. But that's the only way that I have found that seems to work, and to bring forward actual ideas and person's own experience. Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time to come in today. It's been really helpful.
I'm going away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Sarah. Oh, Sarah or Sara? It is Sarah. Excellent. And with no H. Ditto. It's great to see. Small things.
It's either or, so
I know.
Yeah, thank you.
So welcome. Thanks so much for taking the time to come in today.
Tēnā koutou. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share ideas, and to also to thank Environment Canterbury for the public transport that we do have. My name is Sara Gerard. I was born and raised in Canterbury and lived in Christchurch over different times of my life, and have practiced as a landscape architect, urban designer for over 30 years. Our family in Sumner use the Metro bus services daily, and we greatly appreciate the frequency and convenience of the number 3 bus. We would like to see a wider range of society taking public transport through promotions such as incentive packages in workplaces, sports, clubs and entertainment venues, and increasing frequency and convenience of our bus services for lower economic social communities, socio-economic communities such as Aranui. We are in favour of any customer support initiatives that enhances security and safety for the driver and for patrons. Also, a range of payment systems, including cash, to allow 1 dog per patron, on-demand community bus services. I would also like to see higher cycles and electric scooter racks available beside bus racks. While my written submission covered many items, today I would like to explore ideas for Point 11, a special weekend Sumner beach bus service, and 2, Point 11, Environment Canterbury coordinating with Kiwi Rail as a stakeholder for a greater Christchurch Metro railcar service, say. So first of all, the road from Ferrymead to Sumner, it gets very congested on fine days and the weekends, especially over the summer, and making it very difficult for emergency vehicles getting to and from Sumner, especially fire trucks. One of the ideas I've had, exploring alleviating the congestion, is a free weekend special express Sumner beach bus during the summer months, with a park and ride service allowing dogs leaving from Settlers Crescent in Ferrymead to the Sumner beach and return, say from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The weather-dependent special express bus could run alongside the Metro 3 weekend bus service to Summer to allow dogs, and each patron at Sumner Beach stop could receive vouchers for a free return or free future trip to Sumner and, say, a popsicle voucher. To help families in local communities and New Brighton beaches, maybe a similar bus service could be trialled for the New Brighton Pier. Next to explore is the concept for the railcar service for Greater Christchurch. And why would I be looking at this? It's because of the ongoing expansion of subdivision development on the plains around Christchurch. Improved regional public transport connectivity and convenience is needed to alleviate congestion into the city, reduce energy consumption and CO2 emissions, and provide for society as a whole. I would like utilisation of the existing Kiwi Rail corridors to allow Metro rail car connections at realistic fares for the following routes with intermediary stops, say from Darfield to the city, and then Burnham to Rolleston to the city, City Timaru return, so with Ashburton, City Hornby extending the Little River link line to Prebbleton and Lincoln return, and then Amberley, Rangiora, City Hornby return. If railcar frequency causes congestion on railway lines and crossings, perhaps elevated second-storey infrastructure could be an option. As the existing Kiwi Rail Addington station is in an obscure, disconnected site, I propose a separate Metrocar railway station sited at the old sales yards site on the southern end of Deans Avenue. And as all railcar services connect with Hornby, a hub located there. The CBD tram line, instead of being a tourist restaurant, could be a hop-on, hop-off transport mode connecting the Metro Greater Christchurch railcar station and the City Bus Exchange. The loop tram line would connect these with the hospital, and through connecting to the existing tram line circuit, many notable city destinations, and ideally extend to the stadium. I hope I am giving you some food for thought, firstly providing for and promoting a Sumner Beach service designed to alleviate the main road congestion to and from Sumner in the weekends. And secondly, if there's an opportunity to collaborate with Kiwi Rail as a stakeholder to explore options for providing a cost-effective public railcar service connecting Greater Christchurch with the city CBD, its tram, its bus exchange and its suburbs.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Neville's got a question for you.
Thank you for your submission. You talked about pets on the free Sumner bus to the beach. How do you feel about that in normal day-to-day services off-peak as suggested, or as... So I have written a bit about that in my notes.
Just turn your microphone.
Yeah, it has to go on.
Yeah, cool. I think I've got a bit about it, and I think dogs need to be. I've written it down. The bus ride could allow one dog per person on the bus, and pay for the dog on the same rate as the passenger. Each dog is to be on a lead and have disposable absorbent pee pad to cover the seat or floor, and of course an absorbent appropriate bag for the dog per event, if it was to happen. To prevent dogs blocking the aisle or causing concern to other passengers, the dog is to sit on the seat or floor adjacent to the window. It's my feelings about it.
That's great. Thank you. Nicole? No, that's great. Thanks so much, Sarah. It's been really helpful.
And if you want any of the visualizations of the map, the routes I was putting forward to you, I'm happy to provide that as well. So.
If you would like to send them through, we'd always welcome some extra material. So,
okay.
Yep.
And this was different to my...
Yeah. Are you able to either hand that in or email that?
I'll email it through with
that'd be great.
With the routes.
With them. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this.
TDM. Okay. So the Cashmere High School Sustainability Council. Welcome. Okay. Cool. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming along. So you've got 10 minutes total, including questions.
Sweet. Kia ora koutou. My name is Tom Freedman, and I'm here with Louis Gerard and Neve Cooper from the Cashmere High School Sustainability Council. Our council is a group of students from all year levels passionate about sustainability. We meet once a week and work on various initiatives such as predator trapping, water quality testing, native bush restoration and maintenance, and waste management. As a council, we have won international awards due to our initiatives, securing funding for our wind turbine, solar array, and kinetic floor tiles. We have also submitted on previous council plans and consider advocacy a very important part of our council work, and so we're really grateful for this opportunity. The first area that our council has identified for improvement is that mass rapid transit must be a priority and a short or medium term focus for the council. MRT would provide a huge number of benefits to a community, from the obvious reduction in congestion and pollution to improve social cohesion, productivity, and economic growth. For a city of our size, we are decades behind most other developed nations in our lack of MRT. This needs to change, especially given the huge amount of population growth we will experience over the next few decades and the rapidly worsening climate crisis. We support the proposed routes as set out in the plan from Belfast into the city and out to Hornby, and we support light rail over bus metro. Light rail is better for the environment, higher capacity, and is an important investment for the future of our city. We also support commuter heavy rail systems on existing rail infrastructure to satellite towns such as Rangiora and Rolleston. Placing MRT as a long-term focus will result in at least another decade of inaction, and who's to say that the future council will not do the same? We've been promised a system for years, yet a real plan has never materialised. We need a concrete plan for mass rapid transit now if we want our city to continue to grow sustainability into the future.
Kia ora, I'm Louis, and I will now talk about some suggestions we had in regards to improved accessibility. We strongly support the $2 flat fare with the $1 concession rate. This simple fare system helps make budgeting easier and means more people can afford to get around. The $1 concession for students is especially important to us. It gives students freedom to travel with one of the cheapest bus fares in the country, which we consider ourselves very lucky to have. We would hate to lose this and ask that the flat fare is kept after the trial expires on the 30th of June next year. This would ensure public transport remains accessible to as many people as possible. We also wanted to bring up the issues around bikes on buses. This is a highly useful service for many people. I myself love knowing that I can put my bike on the bus when it's getting cold or rainy, and it's especially useful through the Littleton Tunnel because you can't bike through that. We are aware the service was removed due to nationwide issues with the headlights, but believe this is an incredibly helpful service and is worth finding a solution for. We hope that this can be solved in a timely manner to restore the use of bike racks on the bus. As a student in our council also brought up, there is sometimes not enough public knowledge or compassion in regards to the priority seating areas on the buses, and individuals who need this space are not given it. We would appreciate further signage and advertising around this if possible.
Kia ora. We also support the continual focus on improving the frequency and reliability of buses, especially around school hours. A recent survey of our kura showed 1 in 5 students choose to bus, and ultimately we believe that this change will continue to increase the number of people busing. We also very strongly support the medium-term focus of the full decarbonisation of the public transport fleet and the decision to only import zero-emission buses from July 2025. We implore that you continue to strive to achieve the central government's target of net carbon zero by 2050 and ask that you aim to achieve this goal ahead of time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
That's great. Thank you so much. Nicole, did you have one?
Thanks for coming to talk to us. So you've got about what do you think would improve how accessible and inclusive public transport is in Christchurch, and have said better design, priority and accessible seating areas. You've said yourselves now about just having more advertising and awareness of those areas. There's no, from what you've written here, there's no ideas that you've got about the actual seating areas themselves that you think may need to be changed?
Yeah, I think the main issue we sort of raised was more a cultural issue, I guess, of people not giving up the seat. So maybe, yeah, if there could be more obvious signage around the seats or stuff. It was another student who's not here today who brought up the issue. So, but yeah, more about the advertising and understanding of when to give up a seat.
Thank you. Neville, have you got anything? No. When it comes to that advertising and more information, is that an area that you've looked at as well generally for Metro, for the bus network? I mean, do you think that students are well enough aware of access and availability and things?
Yeah, I do feel like overall everybody seems to have a good understanding of the busing and kind of how it works. I do think quite a major thing stopping people from busing is kind of the reliability and frequency. But I think the advertising is reasonably good.
Yeah, and often we find that once students finish school, they start switching away from public transport. What do you think we could do about that?
That's definitely a trend at Cashmere. I think we did a survey and something like a very large majority of our year 13s switched from walking or biking to driving to school. And most people anecdotally have, drive as their main mode of transport now. I think more frequency, more reliability. I think the there's definitely a stigma around public transport, which I'm sure you will know. I think more reliable service, especially around school hours, would improve numbers.
Yeah.
And I think if a mass rapid transit ever did come about, I think more people would use that too.
Yes. Yeah, it's much cooler than the bus, right?
For sure.
So just one last check on the pets issue. What we've got here is like an unhappy, very happy, unhappy, happy. Did you want to just give a quick overview of where you see the pets issue?
In discussion with the whole council, everyone was very supportive of pets on buses, and also I think most people were also supportive of not requiring an approved carrier as well.
Okay, so the ability to take a dog on a leash with a muzzle. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for clarifying that, and thank you so much for taking the time to come in. I know that it's end of exams and you'll be looking forward to doing something different. So I hope you enjoy your holidays and thanks for taking the time today. Oh yeah, did you just want to sit there while you get a photo? Or just do it here?
Yeah, we'll get a photo outside, but thank you.
Okay, sorry, I should have taken one from the front. So sometimes do that for people. Okay, James, welcome. You are our last of the day.
No pressure.
Thanks so much for taking the time to come in. If you just push the button on the front, the lights will come up. Yeah.
Perfect. Tēnā koutou katoa no ōtou tahi ahau ko kaitau tōku iwi, ko James tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name is James and I'm here on behalf of Gareth and myself, two current Environment Canterbury Youth Rōpū representatives. Both of us are avid public transport users, as are many of the youth in the Waitaha region. Firstly, we support the introduction of pets on buses, on the basis it has the potential to encourage more patronage on public transport. We feel the change will improve accessibility to public transport for pet owners, reducing the reliance on cars for pet transport in the Waitaha region, such as going to a dog park over the weekend. It is also cheap to implement, and while there are concerns around pet allergies, we consider the use of pet carriers to be a suitably mitigating step to manage this risk, given the close contact nature of most pet allergies. The most common allergenic sources being, of course, pet hair and skin cells, and surprising to me, saliva and urine. So as long as there is some physical separation, pets should be all goods for travelling on the buses. We feel that the limitations imposed via size, off-peak hours, pets per person, and pet carrier requirements are good steps to mitigate some of the suggested concerns around the policy. We feel that this policy should be implemented, especially considering that similar rollouts have already been successfully implemented for Auckland and Wellington train and bus services. To do the same in Ōtautahi will provide a more consistent approach to the issue across Aotearoa. However, we would like to make a note that there was a lack of clear messaging in the advertising of the Pets on Buses proposed policy, with minimal indications that pets are to be in pet carriers and that the policy would be applied during off-peak times. This is a concern as often people will not engage any more than scanning a social media post or chipping in with a cursory social media comment, with no further research. If the policy is not accurately communicated, it is difficult to expect people to meaningfully engage with the policy and give useful feedback. On the topic of fare structure, we would encourage ECAN to keep the $2 fare permanent and not to implement alternatives like distance-based fares. Distance-based fares would likely discourage people from taking longer distance journeys via buses and would have a detrimental impact on the uptake of public transport use due to the poorer optics compared to the flat fare structure, especially even if it may be considered a fairer structure overall. We encourage the continuation of converting buses from diesel to electric, as the reduction of noise makes walking, cycling and travelling on buses more enjoyable due to the reduction in noise pollution. This is, of course, alongside the massive benefit of carbon emission reductions associated with an electric fleet, and also human health benefit through less exposure to emissions. We also recognise that the tag-on, tag-off component of the NTS provides useful data to improve metro services, as the current model lacks the data clarity required to effectively achieve this. And anecdotally, I know a few geography postgrad students that have really struggled with making sense of the current available data, so there's definitely room for improvement. Finally, and not entirely off topic, I would like to add that we have great concerns regarding the new bikes on buses policy, or more clearly stated as a ban on bikes on buses by the industry, and would in the strongest terms advocate for work to be undertaken to enable a reversal of this policy. Though I do acknowledge that this decision was not made by the Regional Council, anything you can do in this regard would be amazing. Thank you all for listening. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions from Nicole, Neville? No, very clear. I'm just interested in the pets one. So you're in support of the current proposal, which is sort of small ones and carriers. There's quite a lot of commentary around having larger pets, so maybe larger dogs that can't go in a carrier. And how do you feel about that?
So the the background would really be looking at the implementation of that bigger dog policy in other areas. It's not something I have largely looked at, but I think it's Auckland or Dunedin that implemented the big dog policy. And so I think looking at the facts that since the implementation there hasn't been any massive issues, it is something that would likely be a stepping stone from the current proposal onward, based on, not massive issues from when it was implemented up north.
So start with the current proposal and then see how that goes and then maybe move up to the next size.
Yes, precisely.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming in and spending your time and your expertise with us.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And being that that is the last heard submission for the day, we will now adjourn the meeting and
Ending the meeting.
Are we ending the meeting? Or are we just meeting again separately? We're not just adjourning this one? Okay, that's fine. We usually do all in one. Okay, so we will close the meeting and we will need the Karakia up there. I could just do one. Yeah. But the next Greater Christchurch Partnership Hearings panel will be held on Monday the 9th of December to deliberate on the submissions received. Okay, I'll do that one. Unuhia ki te uru tapu nui o te tāne, kia wātea, kia mama, te nakau, te tinana, te wairua i te ara takata, koe rā e rongo whakairia ake ke runga, kia tina, homie, huie, tai kie. Kia ora.